10th of August, 2024 at 10:42 a.m. here on Harstine Island in the state of Washington, United States of America. Welcome once again to our cosmic journey. It's the story of the lowly designer and the lowly dev charting their way to making the world's greatest astrology software. I am the designer, Jake. He is the engineer, Trey. Hi, Trey.
Hi, Jake.
I usually say hello. I decided to change it up. This week has
Yeah.
been filled to the brim with uncharacteristically strange situations which have brought us out of the development of the world's best astrology software, the design of the world's best astrology software, and has instead made us change out the world's worst starter in a Jeep for the world's best new starter in a Jeep, for example.
Yeah. We had a power outage. We had Jeep drama. We replaced multiple components in the Jeep. Jeep is fine now. This is great.
Yeah.
But
In
we
case
also had
anyone
all
was
these
wondering,
weird,
the Jeep is fine.
yeah, we had all these weird moments of serendipity too, where it was like everything is lost, like we're totally screwed, and then all of a sudden, like the neighbor comes over and is like, "Hey, you want to borrow our truck?"
Yeah.
And or like, oh, we
Ordered
ordered
the
the wrong
wrong
part from
part.
the parts store,
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
they're like, "Oh no, I've got the other part that's actually the
I
right one."
have randomly the correct part for you, even though it is on back order, but for some reason it's here. And I'm like,
Yeah,
okay, worked out great for us.
yeah. It was a lot of that kind of thing.
Yeah, it was kind of nuts, but in a very kind of lovely. It was just lovely. It was lovely to have the universe kind of go against us and then turn towards us in one
Yeah,
week.
it was very much a quest. We learned things, we were changed by the quest, and the quest ended up being a success, at least for now.
Exactly. I'm balancing the sound at the same time, so if the sound sounds a little bit weird, sorry about that. This episode is called Illuminating Perspective. I have a checking question today. Trey is going to show some stuff about the moon speed and the moon speed graph, as we talked about. I'm going to show you some task flows, exciting work. I have to admit, I don't think I got enough done that I wanted to accomplish this iteration, but
Same.
sometimes your Jeep stops working and you have to deal with that. That's very important. It happens.
Yeah,
Um,
life got a yeah, life ended up taking away a lot of our attention this
exactly.
cycle.
Life sometimes gets in the way. All right, so Mr. Henry, because I have screwed up this view, you're not going to be able to be heard when I put you over here, but I'm going to show you. We are playing Rhyme Time today. That is, of
Okay.
course, what we're doing. If you don't remember what Rhyme Time is, might I suggest you go look back at that other episode because I'm not going to explain it. But in short, there's a two-word cryptic clue. It's going to rhyme. It is going to be two syllables each. So two syllable word that's going to fit this cryptic clue, Mr. Henry. And it is moon's home moving swiftly. Two syllables, moon's home moving swiftly. Mr. Henry, are you ready to lodge an answer?
Oh well, I was gonna work through it, so I think the first part might be mansion because it's two syllables, and you said like lunar house or something, right?
It's moon's home moving swiftly.
Oh, moon's home.
So let me tell you right now, Mr. Henry, mansion is an incorrect answer, but you know what? We'll get back to it towards the end of the show. How about that? Again, just
Okay.
dear viewer, moon's home moving swiftly, mansion, not right, incorrect. Trey, do you want to talk a little bit about do you want to introduce the moon speed graph to us all?
Yeah, I think we talked about the design for it. I think maybe you showed that last cycle. I can't remember. But anyway, so we now have well, we have most of it implemented actually. Some things came up during the implementation, but I'm going to switch over here. Um, so actually, the chart for right now is kind of fun because if I click on the moon and we look now, we'll see. Uh, Not only do we show the position and all this the house that it's in, the essential dignity, but we also now show the lunar mansion. Speaking of mansions, that's why I thought you probably did mansion in the clue in the
Yes.
rhyme time. And then you can also see that there's a little sliver here
Can you zoom in on that
for
sliver? Is
Yeah.
that available to you? Nice.
Um, yeah. So the shape of this is actually wrong, which is going to be fixed. It has to do with the way that the browser calculates rounded corners. But the but what this is showing is that um, according to some ancient authors, 12 less than 12 degrees per day of lunar movement is considered slow. That's actually on very close to the moon's slowest speed, which is why this line is so far back on that graph. And so there's just a little sliver there indicating that the moon is currently slow, according to the ancient authors, but it is starting to speed up, which is what this purple arrow here is. Um, but so given that, if we go back a couple days, what we should see is that the moon is slow and slowing down, which is exactly what we see. So
Very
here, the
cool.
moon is slow and it's still slowing down. So if we go maybe back one day, let's see, yeah, then the moon was like, so yesterday, the moon was about as slow as she ever goes. And just to show what this looks like in uh, a chart that maybe has like a moon that's going a little bit faster. So this is Jake's natal chart, and here we can see that the moon was moving pretty normal speed, but was slowing down. And
Nice.
was in the first lunar mansion, which is not such a big thing for natal, but if you're doing other forms of astrology like electional, the lunar mansion is quite important.
Yeah, if you're electing for
So
the first house, first lunar mansion, excuse me, you're talking about taking medicines, organizing your life, and murder, which is cool.
I thought, oh yeah, anyway, so the um, uh, showing the first mansion, sorry, showing the lunar mansion, showing the lunar speed, we have uh, the rounded corner issue. But the other thing that we noticed while implementing this is, so if I just go to like cast a chart for now, and I'm moving through time, so I'm trying to find an election. We will have better electional flows than this.
Yeah, don't
Just
worry
as a
about that.
reminder,
This is
we've talked about this before, but this is just like I'm just moving around
we're just moving
playing
through
with the
time.
chart.
Yeah,
And so if I click on the moon, you can see that the chart is updating, but this detail view is not updating, which would make that very like obviously this needs to sync up. We actually weren't sure about that initially because we thought maybe when you click on the detail view that you would want that to be sort of like a frozen moment in time.
yeah,
But actually, we're quite sure now that that should move with time. And so yeah, good example of feeling things out. Um, but anyway, yeah. So that's it. That's basically it for lunar speed this
nice.
cycle. There was also I think a bug fix or two in this cycle, but
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was the big implementation thing because, like we said,
It was
life
a
kind of got
small
in the
week.
way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
it was a small week for Cosmic, sadly.
exactly. And as part of that small week, then that's not the right one. This one. As part of that small week, that I also didn't get enough of what I would consider to be a we ask ourselves every cycle, what is what can we do in order to feel like we've accomplished what we want to accomplish in the cycle? I have this little piece of paper that tells me over the next 12 weeks. Actually, I'm in week 3 of those 12 weeks, what I want to accomplish. And I'll read for you what week 3 says. Design all steps for perspective. I designed most of the steps for perspective and designed against requirements of Stripe as our payment provider. I did about that much of it. So sometimes life gets in the way, like we said, and we deal with it. So I'm going to have to adjust our plan. I'm not going to beat myself up about it because things happen. But let me just show you a little bit about like what it means to design against a perspective. So what you're seeing here, am I pointing the right way? Yes. What you're seeing here
Yep.
is the is just me is my handwriting, and what you're um, we're looking at the nested objects of perspective, just making sure that everything like what is nested objects. So there are a bunch of objects in the system. Those objects usually have relationships to other objects in the system, and where things get very confusing or strange in software when from a design perspective is when these objects aren't consistently interconnected in a way that is obvious to users. So this is me just doing the check to making sure our perspective has these things. Let's not worry about that because it doesn't much matter. But this is the CTA matrix, or the calls to action matrix. And what you're seeing here is there are a number of buttons that affect things that are either in the perspective object itself or affect the associated objects. So some of the most common ones, and I'll show you something a little bit more designy, add or remove points shown. So maybe you would, let me go here. Maybe you would not want to see outer planets. Maybe you're saying, I want to see the visible planets, but I really love Ceres, Ceres. I really love, or maybe certain asteroids or something like that. There is flexibility, theoretically, and as designed in our system to say, I can take some points out, I can put some points in. And as Trey had astutely pointed out to me, these things might change in an educational context when you really want to focus down on one very specific placement. So you might say, I only care about showing you where the sun and the moon sit right now. And maybe, you see the ascendant because you want to explain the big three. That's not the astrology that you do every day, but you're doing this as more either a educational thing for new astrologers, or you want to focus down the chart into something very, very easy to understand and easy to comprehend, to take away all of the other cruft that could sit in a chart. Do you want to talk a little bit more about this kind of focus delineation thing? Urania did this
Yeah.
really well, actually.
Yeah, well, it did it kind of well,
It did
in
it.
that you
I
could.
think it did it well. I think it did it
Well,
okay.
thank you.
Yeah, yeah, of
Yeah, yeah,
course.
yeah. I think it is one of the features that people generally really like about Urania. So you can like kind of click on things and you'll only see the aspects between those things, and it kind of like it highlights them in the chart, but it doesn't actually get rid of anything else in the chart.
Right.
And so it's not really focusing in. And so, like just to give another example of how this could be really useful outside of like things like education, stuff like that, is like people doing YouTube videos, maybe on elections, right? So like if you're doing like, oh, here's a good lunar mansion election,
Right.
you might only care about like the ascendant, the position of the moon. If maybe there's like one other thing going on, that that's kind of like in the mix, you might maybe want to have that showing, but everything else can just be off the chart entirely.
Yeah.
And then you could just pop up this chart, and then you could say like, okay, like this is just the stuff that we're talking about. And so it's a little bit better for that sort of scenario to just like really be able to say like that other stuff is like just not even here. And as Jake was showing at the top of that design, which you kind of skipped through pretty quickly, the um, user that it belongs to, the rings that use it, those are how we determine that, like, because you might have a way that you generally like to look at things, but in specific cases you want like this chart to only show certain things, and maybe you want to share that chart as is. And maybe if somebody shares a chart with you, you want to see the way that they shared it, so like what they were looking at, but then you might also want to use your perspective with that chart eventually, right? And so this is where things become very complicated with and I think we've talked about what perspectives are a lot in the past, but
Yes.
basically a perspective is all of the things that determine sort of what you're interacting with on the screen. So like the points that are available, like whether or not you're showing houses, what house system you're using, all of that stuff, the stuff that would normally be called settings in another
Right.
application.
So what you're seeing over here is Trey's screen again, and the perspective shows whole sign house system with all of the luminaries. There's all of the lots that we support. Like it's showing everything. It's also showing the outer planets as well. Sorry, I said the luminaries. I meant the visible planets, the outer planets, the lots. But in theory, we can only do this right now through command line prompting. But in theory, you
Right.
can change the perspective to hide or show certain things, to change different settings. These, then Trey said, these would normally sit within settings, within traditional astrological software, but because there might be times where you might want to show different things at different times, it's sitting in settings doesn't make a whole lot of sense to us, which is why we have this thing called perspectives. So going back to me for a second, that is this one. Okay, so we saw this, right? Perspective has these things. These are the calls to action that can happen here. And so we'll just go through this call to action here. Add remove points shown. Trey has not seen this yet. And then we have a user story. As a guest or member, I would like to add or remove points from a perspective so that I can either temporarily focus on what is most important or, quote unquote, permanently change my view of charts, otherwise known as rings, to respect the type of astrology I like to do. So we have let's walk through the small and slow journey here. A ring showing Uranus. A button on the left-hand panel says adjust view. That's here. It's not shown in the UI yet, but let's assume that's here. Let's say that the member clicks the glyph. So they click on Uranus. Well, we have a detail panel that pops out for Uranus. And there's a CTA at the bottom that says you can do something with this. I wrote delete here, remove. I don't know what this CTA says, but there's just something to do. You click on this button and you now have a way to add or remove points that looks, Trey has said, like a traditional settings screen. Maybe this is not the design of it, that's fine, but that's not the only way that you can do it, right? So there's this button on the left-hand side here that said adjust view. If I click that adjust view button, I see, general settings. I click on this tab for points, and I'm back up here, right? Here are all the points that I can adjust. Or, as we're so fond of saying, we have this thing called the Cosmic Console. You can hit Command K, and you can type, user opens the command, the Cosmic Console. They can start typing things like REM for remove or delete, and they see that there is one of these add remove points from chart. They click that, and it shows 3 different ways that we can accomplish the same task, and having different ways to do the same thing, but having it be consistent across those things is very powerful. And this is what makes really well-designed software well-designed, because it anticipates the different ways in which users will approach problems. Some people will say, I have this Uranus here, I want to get rid of it. I interact directly on it. Some will go through what looks like a setting, some will type a thing, and that's really the power of all of this. And I'm very excited to get it implemented. I'm very excited to do the rest of the task flows. Like I said, I want to do more. We're not there yet. So that's all for that. Any final thoughts about that, Mr. Henry, before we go back to your rhyme time?
No, because you mentioned the console thing. That was the only other thing that I was going to mention, is that that this all of this capability will be exposed in the console as well. So it's kind of like there'll be ways in which you can interact with it in very obvious ways, because there'll be like calls to action, buttons, things like that make it very straightforward, like how you get into it. But then once users become more familiar with the system, they'll become trained on the console, and then you'll just be able to get to these things very, very quickly with hotkeys and console commands.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, Mr. Henry, just to remind you, Moon's home moving swiftly.
I have no clue.
No clue?
Okay. If mansion isn't correct, then I don't know. I'm just drawing a blank.
Okay, Moon's home. What is the domicile? What is the domicile lord
Cancer.
of the moon? Yes, Cancer. All right, so the moon's domicile is in Cancer.
Oh, I see where you're going. Okay, so maybe
I'll give you one more clue. It's one of Santa Claus's reindeer. It's not Cancer Vixen. It's not Cancer Blitzen.
I don't know.
Cancer Prancer.
Oh, prancing is not moving swiftly.
Well, okay. I don't know. I just came up with it. Calm down. Hey, if you are as angry as Mr. Henry is about this rhyme time, feel free. Right below. Drop a comment below. Feel free to smash that subscribe button while you're down there. Other than creating much better puzzles for people, for game playing, what should the viewer do today, Mr. Henry?
Oh, maybe. Have you ever gone fishing? Maybe
I
fishing.
haven't. No, I haven't. Go fishing today. Catch some rainbow trout. Hopefully, you have a fully stocked lake that has plenty of them for you. Have a lovely day. Have a lovely weekend, or whatever day you watch this video. We love you very much. We will talk to you again next week and see you again very soon. Goodbye now.
Bye.